I always really like these design school updates that we do every 2 weeks because so much happens in 2 weeks um, that it's sort of like an interesting little puzzle to figure out, well, how do I tell this story and how do I not overwhelm people and what level of depth do I go into? And, because there's so much going on. And this time I actually get to share the parallel landscape leader retreats that occurred in Colombia and in Colorado, and then the preparations for this huge Regenerate Cascadia tour that Penny and I get on an airplane in 8 days and fly to Seattle. And yes, and Claire, Claire is mostly upright, and I'm pretty impressed because Claire and Brandon are doing a ridiculous amount of work. We currently have 14 cities that want us to come and give talks and workshops spread across a month, and so it's going to be sort of shocking in its logistical complexities. But what I really want to do today is sort of paint the picture of what is happening in the design school, and what I mean is like what's happening right now, what's unfolding around us, because you can't really see it all. No one can see it all. It's happening in multiple places with multiple groups in multiple networks on multiple continents. And so it's there's really no proper way to see it. So the best we can do is create a story that holds enough pieces of it, not all of it, but enough pieces of it that you can at least see the shape of what's happening. And I think that's really about as much of an honest objective as I could have for the presentation I'm going to give today. Is I want to paint a picture that gives you a general sense of what's happening, because there's a lot that's going on. And so what I want to do, as I usually do in these sessions, is I'm going to jump right into the presentation. I think the presentation will take about a half an hour, and we'll go through a variety of topics. And then afterwards, we'll have plenty of time for discussion about what we see happening, how we see the pieces coming together, questions that might be emerging, and just to name it beforehand, this is a story that is fractal. So it's actually unfolding at multiple scales simultaneously, which is one of the reasons it's so difficult to see. And so, so with that in mind, I'm going to jump right into presentation mode, and then we can have a big discussion afterwards. So let me share my screen. And here we go. This is
cooking the bacon in the oven, so it's going to take a little bit.
Oh, gosh, and Rita, if you could mute yourself, please. So I'm tempted to see what you're eating in your oven. Oh my gosh. Thank you. So today is our design school update for September 19th. And I thought that this image right here is just a beautiful piece of artwork I found on a Google search. For me, this really captured the sense of what's happening. It's just this ancient tree growing into new spaces of growth and life in a million different directions with the majesty and the mystery of the cosmos around it. That Gaia is weaving. And I really mean Gaia is weaving on multiple fronts at multiple scales. And it's sort of incredible. And so, so I want to just explore a little bit about how Gaia is weaving as it relates to the design school. And I came up with a little cartoon way of summarizing. This is like my table of contents for the presentation today, which is we're going to be in a bouquet of flowers, and we're going to be surrounded by beautiful fluttering butterflies. So one of the things that's happening is that there are a lot of bioregional activation processes that are unfolding. Specifically, there are 3 of them that I want to talk about today. The Colorado Leaders Retreat, what's emerging in Regenerate Cascadia, and a Barichara gathering of territorial foundations that took place in the last few days. And then at the same time, a lot of work, I would say this has been where Penny has been most busy in the last 2 weeks, is creating frameworks and context and collaboration, inviting several of you and many members of the design school to help in growing the school culture of the design school. And specifically today, I'm going to talk about the formation of a welcome team and what they're doing, the work that's unfolding in a space called Evolving Pro-Social Culture, and the storytelling circle, which I'll actually ask Penny to talk a little about because it's like wicked awesome and legitimately transformative, and it's new. And then also we have this emerging planetary vision of bioregional Earth, and there are 3 areas that in the last 2 weeks we've had a lot of progress. That there's a growing collaboration in the southeastern part of the Asian continent, specifically and primarily in India. There's the hints of a summit for this planetary vision being held and facilitated through the work of Brian and Susan in the greater Takaranto bioregion, and a lot of work that I'm doing. Really, I'd say a lot of people are doing, but I'll just talk a little bit about the part that I'm doing to create collaborative funding and governance ecosystems in all of the landscapes we're working with, and hopefully to mobilize millions to billions, or as my friend Darna Morton was saying, we need to put a capital T in there because we need to be mobilizing trillions of dollars for the regenerative work that's needed. And then the last place I'm going to talk about is what's coming soon to the design school, which is that we've been quietly working in the background to prepare some things to roll out that most of you don't know about yet, and some of you might have heard about. So we'll talk a little bit about the intergenerational zone and a regenerative economy course that's coming into being. That's going to help us blend with several other networks of regenerative education around the world. So this is my little map of the table of contents for today's talk. We're going to touch on all of these topics to just feel the space of what is emerging. So let's start with the bioregional activations. I encourage everyone who hasn't done it yet to go to regeneratecascadia.org and have a look at this website and see what we're doing. This is a website that Brandon was initially building, and then we ended up getting Sandra, who works with Blue Dot Project, to do a beautiful overhaul, and it really looks lovely. And this is the front end of a massive database management ecosystem and multi-location organizer platform. And what you can already see just by looking at this little screenshot I did of the website is that in the span of 30 days, we're going to visit at least 14 locations with at least 100 local organizers on the ground spread across those 14 locations, making this happen. And the dates of the Cascadia Activation Tour are September 28th through October 30th. There's going to be a bioregional summit following it for 10 days from November 3rd through 12th. And they're actually creating a network of bioregional weavers by inviting these community organizers to organize with each other. There's so much happening here that I'm not even going to attempt to open Pandora's box of what's going on. I just want you to know that Regenerate Cascadia, which starts like in 9 days, is potentially world-changing because of Cascadia's tremendous historic developments in bioregionalism, its immense diversity of capacities, and its unique position in the world for taking the work we're doing to the planetary stage. Of course, you all know, or you should all know, that Brandon and Claire are the two people who are the powerhouse organizers with all of these other organizers. And I just wanted you to get a little feel. This language that they created on the website for me really speaks to what the tour is about. We're connecting communities and stewardship groups of very many kinds throughout the massively enormous Cascadia bioregion. And so what we really want to do is highlight all of the great work being done in local places, in places like Eugene, Oregon, the Columbia River Gorge, Portland in Oregon, and then places like Olympia in Washington, Seattle, Port Townsend, the Olympic Peninsula, Victoria and Vancouver Island, the Gulf Islands, which are the islands that are in the Salish Sea that are not part of the San Juan Islands. Thank you, national borders, for naming them as different. And then also the Bellingham-Skagit Valley area, which is the area basically between Seattle and the Canadian border. And we're going to be touching this massive geography in the span of 30 days. So there's been work going in preparation of this tour back to, if I remember right, Claire, it's like March, I think is when we started, March or April. So we've been planning this for more than half a year. It's absolutely huge, and it's about to begin. So if you have friends in the Cascadia bioregion, send them the Regenerate Cascadia website, the regeneratecascadia.org. But as if that wasn't big enough, I mean, it's freaking huge, that yesterday, the Landscape Leader Retreat of the Colorado River Basin came to completion, which is that after Penny, Benji, and myself back in late May and early June, traveled from the headwaters of the Colorado River Basin to the Sea of Cortez in Mexico, weaving among communities from top to bottom, that landscape leaders spread across the Colorado Basin met for 5 days in Paonia, which is on the North Fork of the Gunnison River, and the West Elks bioregion, which is one of the headwater river systems of the Colorado. And they met for 5 days to explore bioregional learning strategies, how to create bioregional learning centers, specifically the focused effort to create the first bioregional learning center in Paonia, where they've already identified a piece of land, are negotiating arrangements, and are mapping regenerative projects across the landscape, of which there are many. And so Benji and Anna, who were sort of principal organizers with several other people working with them, will be giving a detailed update, a detailed summary of what happened during the retreat. But I just want to show you a couple of pictures that they sent to me in the mad rush of running the retreat. So first of all, here on the left, you can see Eduardo Esparza, where he is facilitating a discussion about the purpose of the group and what's going to happen during the retreat and their ways of weaving all of the incredible strategic capacities of the participants involved. Here on the right, you can see that we have there in the black hat is one of the members of the Mexicali team in Baja California. Next to him is a member of the North Fork of the Gunnison in the West Alps bioregion. And then there on the right is someone from the Queens Creek area of Superior, Arizona on the Gila River in the Copper Corridor.
No cooking.
And that they are having strategy meetings continuously for several days. So I can't wait to hear everything that happened during this retreat. But you can see here on the left is in this picture where they're mapping the watersheds and mapping the landscape of the headwaters to the sea and taking very seriously the need to regenerate the entire Colorado Basin. And they even met my criteria, which is if you're going to have important conversations among the adults, you need to be sure and bring the kids. So this is Gabriel on the right. He's the oldest child of Marissa and Jeremiah, two powerhouse community leaders within the Paonia area. And I think Gabriel just says it all, doesn't he? I mean, he's so adorable. And so they are really taking all of this work seriously. And for 5 days, I would say they were laying the foundations for a narrative that could transform the Colorado Basin. But while that was happening, those of us here in Barichara, Colombia, were hosting two territorial foundations. The one we're creating in Barichara, which we haven't fully agreed on a name yet, although I think we're going to call it Barichara Regenerativa. So Fundación Barichara Regenerativa is probably what its name will be. We're finalizing that decision among a couple of choices. And we hosted the first territorial foundation that was legally constituted in Colombia, which is called Paisano and is based in Bogota. And we also hosted members of the team Territoria, which is the foundation that offers learning supports, financial resources, and legal and administrative supports for creating territorial foundations. And you can see in this map on the left for the country of Colombia, where the 7 territories are, the 7 bioregions that are each creating their own territorial foundation. And so we had 3 intense days on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday of field site visits and learning exchanges, primarily between the Barichara Territorial Foundation and Paisano, with Territoria participating to witness and observe and see how they could help. And it was sort of incredible, actually. And so I just wanted to show you a couple of pictures. Here on the left, these 2 very happy, beautiful women are Kelly and Carolina. They are the founders of Paisano. They have been exemplars of social weaving and prototyping of regenerative economies, helping to mobilize hundreds of organizations and thousands of people within the 8 million person core population of Bogota around a regenerative economic model. And what you can see in this image on the right is there's Kelly sitting on the floor with a dog who decided to sit next to her. Yeah, we welcome multi-species communications when we have these meetings. And what she's doing on that piece of paper is drawing out their governance structure and how their governing structure came to be, which means they have created a model of bioregional governance. The sort of shocking thing is that with only 2 or 3 little exceptions in the details, they created exactly the same governing model that we did for our foundation without us knowing that the other one was doing the same thing. So we had this huge surprise that they were creating a sociocratic, holonic, multi-thematic, multi-purpose, diversified fractal network of ecosystemic learning and collective intelligence, where different thematic areas would have their own autonomous governance for mobilizing resources, which is exactly what we did in Barichara. So it's sort of amazing to have this meeting of minds where we're in two different regions with really powerful local organizing teams, and how deeply we can co-create. And one thing we realize is that no other community foundation on earth does anything remotely like what we're doing. You could just ask Brian what our conversation was like with the Toronto Community Foundation and how unlike the Barichara Territorial Foundation it is. And so one of the insights we had that Kelly and I had a conversation about was how we need to bring this model to the world. We have actually created a collaborative funding and governance model for bioregional regeneration to create regenerative economies, and they are alive and working in 2 landscapes in Colombia, and people all over the world don't have any idea that this exists. It was astonishing. And of course, we did a lot of field site visits. So here on the left, you can see Carlos Gomez, who's pointing down at something on the ground, giving a tour of a place called Agua Santa, where they have been regenerating a stream bed and a forest and creating a regenerative agroforestry system. And then here on the right is our beloved Camila, one of the founders of Bioparque Moncora, where she's giving a tour of the Bioparque and its history and its cultural significance. And look at that little butterfly. Okay, I put the butterfly there. But it was this combination of strategy meetings and field site immersions inspired by the structure of the Refi Barichara event that we did last week. And so we had all of these field site visits and learning and exposure to different regenerative projects, and then really deep strategy meetings spread throughout a span of 3 days. In this picture, you can see me sitting there in the red shirt in the middle, because what I was doing was explaining, I actually had 3 hours to hold discussion about what we're doing in the design school, how we're creating a planetary network of bioregions, and what the significance is of Barichara as the flagship regenerative economic model, living laboratory and prototype that inspired a huge amount of energy in Earth regenerators, a huge amount of energy in the regenerative finance movement, Web3 and crypto, a huge amount of inspiration in places like R3.0, collaborative funding and governance ecosystems, and of course, what we're doing in all the landscapes here in the design school. And so as I was sharing more of this history and context, everyone realized that territorial foundations in Colombia are actually bioregional economies. And they shifted to seeing themselves as part of our global network. But if I do this, I can. Just a second. Where do I go to do it? I want to mute people who are making noise. I'm pretty sure it's Rita. It doesn't give me the ability. Okay, yeah, I'll go back. Ah, over there. Okay. Here.
Yeah. There you go.
Got it. Okay. All right. I didn't want that background noise to be distracting us too much. So, so we had this really beautiful awakening that happened where the Territorial Foundation network, the network of 7 territories in Colombia, or at least these 2 that are among the 7, recognize themselves to be part of the planetary network with us. And this is a huge opening for co-creation that we're going to spread across all of Latin America. So get ready for a lot of other bioregions to learn what we're doing, to learn about and join what we're doing in the design school. And so these were like 3 bioregional activation processes in the Colorado Basin, in the Cascadia, and in the Northern Andes of Colombia. So while all of that was happening, Penny has been holding dialogue and inviting people to co-create around the online community space of the design school. And one of the things that she has been doing, co-facilitated with Anna Papura, is they created a space called within the Culture and Connection Center called Evolving Our Pro-Social Future, where they have been hosting ACT matrices to learn about shared purpose, going through some of the core design principles of Eleanor Ostrom's framework for governing common pooled assets, and applying it to the design school itself in an iterative way. Hold on a second. Can I mute everyone? Ah, there we go. Perfect. That'll fix that. Now we can continue without noise disrupting us. And so one of the things they've been doing for a few weeks now is, I think they're on Fridays, hosting these weekly,
Every other week.
every other week on Fridays. And Anna Papura is the main host, have been hosting pro-social design sessions. And so anyone here is welcome to join those. Also, they have, well, Penny was the primary instigator behind this, creating the design school welcome team. And if I remember right, there are 10 people who joined this welcome team. And they have been having really deep conversations and learning and sharing with each other. Last week, they actually had a campfire host training to train people to be hosts of campfires. And what this welcome team is doing is basically setting up basic protocols to welcome new people when they arrive, to reach out to them personally, to comment on their posts, to invite them into the upcoming social gatherings like campfires or whatever the upcoming gatherings are, to help host and facilitate the arrival of new people. And this host team or this welcome team is sort of like, if you were to go to a church, they would be the ones that are there at the entryway that would take you over to get you a cup of coffee and show you around and tell you where the bathroom is if you need to go to the bathroom. These really basic human touches are absolutely huge, especially with the anonymity and the inhuman nature of online communities. And so this welcome team is already having a transformative effect in the school culture by just proactively engaging and supporting people as they arrive. So after the presentation part, any of you who are on the welcome team, I'd love to welcome you to share what your experiences have been so far. Or any of you who are new to the design school, if you have been welcomed by the welcome team, it'd be great to hear from you too. The third thing that's been happening, and this is what I'm going to ask Penny to talk about, is within the inner space area, Penny has been prototyping a number of deep sort of cultivation of deep inner capacities to be regenerators of the earth and to face planetary collapse and to face immense social pressures from people who are in denial and all kinds of other really challenging things. And so Penny created this storytelling circle and role modeled it last week by telling her personal story. But I'm going to pass it over to Penny to talk a little bit about this one.
Yeah, so the storytelling circle is, it came out of my experience telling my own story in Earth Regenerators, and the transformative experience of doing a deep dive into my own life journey and finding a way to tell that story and then telling that in this space inside Earth Regenerators, and then having people there who reflected back to me in a certain way the beauty of my story, and it transformed my life. So what I started here is a storytelling circle for people to do the same for themselves. So to have a chance to dive into their own life journey and express their story in whatever way they want, whatever creative way they want to do that, and in a group of people, a group of trusted people who will, reflect back to them what they heard and the depth of people's lives. So it's already, I modeled a process by telling my own story in the first circle, and we're going to be doing it once a month with volunteer storytellers so that they have a month to go into the process of looking at their lives and finding how they want to share it and express it. And it's just been, even just the first circle was beautiful and transformative. So and Joe came to the first circle and he had this idea that this could be something like an archive of like the people who are really stepping up at this time in history to regenerate the earth. So we can have these stories recorded, and it's giving people just unique ways to look at their own life and how their life journey relates to what they're doing now in Earth Regeneration.
Yeah, and if you want to join the storytelling circles as a witness who gets to witness someone telling their story and give them support, or to have the opportunity to inquire into your own life and tell your own story, then go to the inner space and join the inner space, which you'll find under the Culture and Connection Center. And then you can join. The next storytelling circle will be Beatrice. And she will be telling the story sometime in late October. I don't know the date.
Probably October 10th.
Oh.
We haven't confirmed yet. But
okay, so in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
But if you want to get involved in these storytelling circles, go join the inner space and you can do so as well. And so these three activities of welcome team, of what's going on here? Gosh, there we go. Evolving our pro-social culture, the welcome team, and the storytelling circles are already having catalyzing effects across the design school. And we see this as being a nice parallel to what's happening transformatively in the bioregional activation processes for landscape leaders and on the ground. And so this is one of those nested levels of stories where we're changing our own lives and each other's lives in the levels of individuals, small groups, landscapes, bioregions, and even continents. And so all of that is happening in connection with the design school. And so when we look at the emerging planetary vision, where some of you may recall from the last design school update we did 2 weeks ago, where Penny spent about a half an hour walking through our vision of birthing bioregional Earth, its ability to form a digital ecosystem and an alliance partnership with many other organizations and many other social movements. And so what we've been doing in the last 2 weeks to help manifest that vision of bioregional Earth is that we have continued activating the planetary network of bioregions, like you could see in the Colorado River Leaders Retreat, as you could see in Regenerate Cascadia, and as you could see in the Barichara Gathering, but also in new bioregions. Penny and I were sent a formal invitation a couple of days ago to go to Lebanon and Beirut as a place that we could do a bioregional activation. And there are bioregional activations starting to be invited in other parts of Latin America and parts of Europe. And so it's actually becoming planetary in scale. So we are actually activating a planetary network of bioregions. We're also really focusing on helping landscape leaders to have learning exchanges with each other, to find financial resources to support their work, creating support systems for them, and helping them to be support systems to each other within and across bioregions. We're really focusing a lot on collaborative funding and governance ecosystems to create bioregional investment platforms and bioregional investment funds for the regenerative work that's happening. And we're also focusing on building a planetary network of bioregional learning centers and helping to model and prototype and learn, how do you set one up? How do you identify a piece of land? How do you form partnerships locally? What is a bioregional learning center anyway? And so on. And as all of these activities are happening, bioregional Earth is becoming more clear and understandable what it will be when we officially launch it later this year. And one of the big things we did in the last 2 weeks is we explored a possible collaboration with Earth Regenerators. Unfortunately, Earth Regenerators decided that they don't want to partner with us at the design school. This came about because there was a division in the leadership, with about half the people really wanting it and about half the people having pretty serious distrust, skepticism, and concern, being afraid we were going to do a hostile colonial takeover. We don't know where those ideas come from because they're really not very well connected with reality, but that was a big part of the breakdown in the negotiation. And then also, it became really clear that Earth Regenerators had never created a very clear or structured decision-making process, so they had no ability to make decisions anyway in any collective sense. And so the negotiation fell apart. And it's pretty clear at this point that the design school will not be partnering with Earth Regenerators. And as we keep moving forward, building the networks of partnerships, oh my gosh, there's so much happening. But one of the things that's happening is we can start to see the glimmers of bioregional Earth growing around us. And our friends in the greater Takaranto bioregion, by which I mean Susan Bosak and Brian Pupa, are starting to plan a summit for regenerating the Great Lakes, and also what it would take to begin dreaming of a regenerated Earth at a planetary scale. They were already thinking of doing a summit in January for the greater Takaranto bioregion. But they started to realize that this could actually be a birthplace for bioregional Earth. And so you could ask Brian if he has any thoughts you'd like to share during the discussion afterwards, after this presentation. But the main thing I want to point out is that as Penny and I are going into Regenerate Cascadia with Claire and Brandon, which starts in about a week, and Benji and Anna are coming out of the Colorado River Basin Leadership Retreat, that we are starting to see a pattern of the planetary scale, that by January, we could actually have a very coherent narrative of what's happening across a very diverse set of bioregions, and that we can bring focus and cohesion to it and immersive experiences through a summit that officially launches bioregional Earth in the greater Takaranto bioregion in January. More soon on that, or maybe more after the Regenerate Cascadia tour, in November, but just so you know that this is a burgeoning and clarifying process on a daily basis that has continued clarifying throughout the last 2 weeks. Another thing that's really becoming clear is in the role that I'm serving in helping to build collaborative funding and governance systems, I'm having meetings with a lot of people. Yesterday, I met with my primary contact at the Novo Foundation about collaborating on directing funding into bioregions. And last week, I was on a panel for the Emerging Futures program of the Joseph Rowntree Foundation, which is preparing to spend down up to 100 million British pounds of its endowment on place-based transformational change in the UK. And I'm starting to advise them on how to structure their funding programs. Yesterday, I met with a woman named Suzanne Bowles, who is the co-founder of a project called Indigenous Commons, which is working with Indigenous-led governance all across the planet around how to transform philanthropy and direct financial resources to the land defenders who are really leading the work of protecting the Earth's precious remaining biodiversity, which those of you who know about this is primarily indigenous territories. And as I was talking with her, I then went on to another conversation with a friend of mine, Anne-Marie Voorhouse, at The Hague in the Netherlands, about the work she's involved with creating constellational listening circles with indigenous groups spread across the Middle East, the Amazon, across Canada, across many other places, around manifesting and birthing the story of the eagle and the condor. And then there's also collaboration with people like Samantha Powers, who's creating bioregional investment funds and working with financial ministries of about 50 national governments, and on and on and on, which is to say that we are weaving among many different actors. Oh, actually, I'll add one more. Well, of course, there's the work that Eduardo Esparza is leading to try and raise $30 million in capital to create a revenue generating engine to fund regenerative projects and create an impact fund for the Colorado Basin. So there's that as well. And there is the Financing Edge Accelerator led by Donna Morton and Adam Lerner, which is going to become part of our Regenerate Cascadia tour. And also I'm going to become a guide to high net worth individuals and foundations for their accelerator process starting in January. You can just start to feel like basically I'm weaving among weavers who are weaving among weavers as we try to create an ecosystem of collaboration that can mobilize tens to hundreds of billions of dollars or more into regenerative projects in the next few years. And this is going to be a huge part of the work of the design school, is how to mobilize resources to landscape leaders in service to bioregional scale regenerative work. So stay tuned, more to be told, but this has been a huge part of my work in the last few weeks and actually for a long time before that. And then we're also having a lot of conversations with our friends in Southeast Asia, which is Kiran Tapawalia and Lamia, and then there's Sean Patel, there's Irthu Suresh, who are also connected with the Sacred Sanctuaries Project in India, which is a network of bioregional learning centers. They're also connected with Atlantis DAO and Dream DAO, which are regenerative finance Web3 support platforms for helping young people to join the regenerative movement, focusing on really impoverished people and up-and-coming social entrepreneurs in places like India. And we are forming a deep collaborative relationship with them around how to take all of the technology platforms they're creating as they're helping to organize people, to bring those people into the design school and then have them start to organize their bioregions. And so we see soon there will be an explosion of activity in this space, and we're just laying the ground for it now. And so as all of this work is happening around bioregional activations on the ground, the online culture building work of the design school, and our emerging planetary vision, which is moving along really, really well, there are also a few things that are about to arrive in the design school. Two things in particular that are coming soon. And one of them was the topic of our bioregional design session last Thursday, which is the intergeneration zone. So the intergeneration zone is going to be a prototype with 40 schools that Brian and Susan and the Greater Takaranto Bioregion are running, where they have eco leaders between the ages of 12 and 18 who are partnering with elders and residents at 40 public schools, which means in 40 different communities, they have a teacher at the school, a youth eco leader, and an elder in residence who will be catalyzing community change throughout an entire year through a project that they have funding to enact. And in partnership with that, we're going to create an intergeneration zone within the design school to invite this intergenerational exchange between young people who are crippled with eco-anxiety, old people who have a broken sense of legacy and purpose. And this will be rolling out probably during the Regenerate Cascadia tour, or possibly as late as early November. But that is to say, within the next few weeks, the intergeneration zone will go live in the design school. The youth eco leaders and elders and residents will join the design school by invitation from Brian and Susan, and we will start creating a dynamic of the intergeneration zone. This will have very obvious connections to the sacred sanctuaries and the work with aspiring youth in India and in other places. So this intergeneration zone is about to become a really dynamic part of the design school. At the same time, a design level member of the school, Grace Rachmani, who I think 15 different times has led an online course on regenerative economics, reputation economies, moneyless societies, and a whole host of things related to the decolonization of money and participatory governance. And she has decided that the next time she runs this course, she's actually going to host it inside the design school, which means we are going to create a learning space for her to bring something like 30 or 40, I don't remember the exact number.
She's
but,
a limit, but I don't.
but
Yeah.
something like 30 participants who are, I've been a speaker in her courses. She brings in world-changing leaders from the regenerative movement. So we're about to have a cohort of these people, these amazing leaders from the regenerative movement, will join the design school as part of her online course. And then she's going to make this online course a rolling, continuous engagement for people to introspect and inquire about their relationship to money, about how to decolonize fundraising, about how to create participatory economic models. And this will become a dynamic living part of the design school. And this is going to roll out, if I remember correctly, around the middle of October.
Yeah.
So in about 3 weeks' time. So these are two really huge changes that are coming to the online platform. And so in summary, you can see that there is a lot going on. And as I said at the beginning, I just wanted to paint a picture for you to see that we have bioregional activations happening in parallel in a growing number of bioregions, that we are growing the school culture and creating deeper coherence and stronger relationships in the online space, that we are about to bring in some very powerful dynamics around intergenerational focus and regenerative economics and right livelihoods. And at the same time, we are cultivating the planetary vision and building collaborative funding and governance ecosystems with a focus point of a major summit that's going to happen in about 4 months' time. All of this is happening within the design school and through its network of partnerships. And like I said before I started, I am summarizing what's happening. There's probably about 10 times as much stuff going on, and I won't even attempt to overwhelm you with it. I just want you to see the picture of what is flourishing in the design school right now. And so let's talk about this. Let's have a conversation about what is emerging in the design school, what we see happening, questions you might have. There are some of you here that are like, if you want to know about the intergeneration zone, we can ask Brian. If you want to know more about the welcome team, you can ask Brad or Diana or Penny. I don't know if there's anyone else on the call who's part of that. If you want to know more about Regenerate Cascadia, you can ask Claire. Oh yeah, and Susan is also part of the welcome team. And if you want to know more about what's happening with the collaborative funding and governance, you can ask me, and so on. And so, yeah, I hope that gives you a picture of what's happening in the design school. Isn't it amazing? It's sort of incredible. And so love to open it up for questions if anyone has one. Yeah, please.
So Brian had mentioned to me in an email the intergenerational zone, and I was curious about it. And I just want to know, is that only for people in the Toronto region, or do you have plans to extend it beyond that?
Brian, you want to speak to that?
Yep. Sure. Yeah. We welcome intergenerational teams and schools from any bioregion or any area around the world. I think this will be a great place to expose students to different parts of the world, to different bioregions, and the work that's going on around us.
Yeah, we also see this as a very alluring idea for other people. I'm looking at Roberta right now just because I like looking at Roberta. She smiles so nice. And also because she's worked with lots of youth with ecological education programs and like site-based restoration education programs. So we've already talked with Roberta a bit about what we could do to replicate this. And when you meet the people in the western slopes of the Colorado River in Colorado, there's so many people doing education work with youth already. And then I look at Bennett, who's officially graduated to his beginning of elderhood because he just had his 30th birthday. But he still looked like a young whippersnapper to me. But yeah, so anyways, just to say, we actually see this replicating to other landscapes really quickly is what we think is going to happen. We think it should spread like hotcakes. Claire.
Yeah, my question's also about the youth exchange, and what would be so amazing is to have sort of a better outline of what the program you've entailed. You've described it a bit, but I would love to be able to bring it into some of the spaces that we're already having conversations with people on. And yeah, I wondered if there was maybe even like a video presentation or maybe like a written something that gives more of that. I think you have on your website, I can't remember anymore, but I remember you sending stuff on your website, and I think I remember reading there, so that might be also one of the places. But yeah, I think this is replicable. I'm just so excited about what entails. So
Yeah.
And maybe, Brian, if you have a link you can put in the chat, because I'd like to read about it more also.
Yeah, I was just going to say I'll drop some links in the chat for people to check out the information we have on the website so far. We're very much prototyping this and welcome other bioregions to join in. The whole idea is we have young people who are experiencing eco-anxiety. We have young people with a lot of energy and ideas as well. And we have an aging population with a lot of social capital, a lot of retired people from all backgrounds. And if we can bring that together, you have a powerful intergenerational dynamic. 7th generation GTB uses 2 underlying dynamics: the intergenerational dynamic, bringing generations together and looking backwards and forward 7 generations as from the indigenous peoples, integrating in indigenous knowledge and worldviews. And then the other dynamic is the place-based dynamic, connecting people to their place, to their bioregion, and do that fractal scale linking from the bioregion you live in to the subcontinental area you live in, for us, the Great Lakes, and then linking to the planetary network of bioregions around the world. And linking what the students do in their backyard, their schoolyard, their town or city, linking what they're doing regeneratively to the wider efforts around the world to regenerate the planet. And if we can do that, we bring a lot more meaning and purpose to the local work and help people see those fractal connections and how they're contributing to the regeneration of the entire planet.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. Over to you, Chad.
Hello. Yeah, so much going on, very exciting. It's also timely for me today. One thing you mentioned was collaborative funding ecosystems. Of course, we have collaborative funding within the design school, but here referring to broader ecosystem relationships in the community. And after this, I'm going to go to the annual meeting of the Ann Arbor Area Community Foundation. And so they've sort of a pillar of the community here. And I know, Joe, we had a little back and forth earlier about some of your discoveries around funding in the Great Lakes. And so that organization, I believe, and certainly some of the other groups that are going to be there have been involved in that. And here I'm thinking about it's called the Great Lakes One partnership or something like that. So there was a significant amount of funding that was intended for regional collaboration, but that was temporary due to a change in leadership, I believe. So anyways, timely because I'm going to be in a situation where this conversation may have some salient. So I was just wondering if you had any thoughts about framing in terms of what we're saying here when touching base with potential community partners and community foundations in particular. So any insights there would be much welcome.
Yeah, I have one right off the bat, which is that the primary strength and weakness of community foundations is the mindset of their donor network. If you have a really sort of rigid, conservative, old world donor network, like I remember when I talked with Chris Casillas about the Arizona Community Foundation in Phoenix, and it was just like a bunch of old rich white guys who wanted to go golfing. And so the community foundation was profoundly uninnovative and uninspiring. And so just that's like an example of if the donor network is pathetic, the community foundation is hamstringed, even if they have great staff. And one of the things we learned from the Toronto Community Foundation was that they were working very hard to diversify their donor networks. And that there was slow, long work, but it was opening up entirely new strategic landscapes. And so I would think that a similar kind of insight could be made, which is how can the community foundations of the Great Lakes help each other to diversify their own donor networks and each other's, so that they can achieve collaboration because the pressure comes from their own donors, which would be the best. You know, the people in the staff would love to champion what their donors want rather than fight to stop the bad ideas their donors have. And, you know, and you can see this kind of tension a lot in foundations. And so I think there's a lot about donor education and about building donor networks that community foundations in particular are well situated to do because they're multi-purpose. You know, they're not fixed to one theme. And so that allows them to touch a diversity of donor networks for a region. So I think that's a really powerful thing to bring up. And there's plenty more, but maybe that's like, if you're to have that. And then also the other one that's sort of related is the power of these nested levels. To say, yes, you're a community, but you're part of real landscape connection, to really encourage them to try to move up to the Great Lakes level, where they could help themselves with things like, if they're going to do donor education projects, who's the best at it among the 70 or 80 community foundations in the Great Lakes, or whatever the number is? There are a lot of them. How could they mobilize resources for those best methods to spread among them across the Great Lakes? And I'm not even talking about money. I'm just talking about knowledge and social capital in that sense. But I think that really encouraging them to use the Great Lakes as an organizing principle to help them strengthen their own capacities, I think that those two things would be really powerful. Knowing they're probably really well aware of their own constraints, so there's not much you can tell them they can really do. But I think those are two things that they could do pretty easily that wouldn't be within their sort of programmatic constraints already. But I'm sure it's going to
be. Thank you.
Yeah, hope that's helpful. And then let me know, we can jump on a call and talk more. Marie, bienvenida. Hello.
Muchas gracias. Hello, everybody. Yeah, so I just wanted to say, because it's my first kind of this update, what's called update. And yeah, it was a really good overview. Thank you very much. I just also wanted to say that I did witness the storytelling circle, the first one, and it was amazing. So I'm looking forward to the next one, if I can, hopefully, because if it's the 10th, but we'll see. And I have two questions. Very practical. The first one is, as you mentioned it with the GRACE, the regenerative economies course. What's the relation with this webinar this Thursday, if I'm not mistaken, this week? And the second, it's more about the Colombian level, as I'm now living in Colombia near Bogota. So if you know that this Fundación Paisano, so this is the bioregion that is like northern, how to say, like out of Bogota, like the northern direction also? Is it part of this? So I can maybe talk with them and see if I belong to this bioregion, because I'm still exploring where I am and what to do here. And so, yeah, I think it would be this. And yeah, thank you.
Great questions. So on Thursdays at 11:30 a.m. Central, we alternate between bioregional updates, where landscape leaders share what's happening in their bioregions, and bioregional design sessions, which is where we pick a topic or a challenge that is shared among many different bioregions. And this week, we're having a bioregional design session on Thursday. And we've chosen to use the time to explore how Grace's course and the opportunity for people to decolonize money and to learn that there are different models of governance, which of course that touches everything, right? It touches everything. So what we're going to have is a design session about how best to benefit, for members of the design school to benefit from this and be able to participate in it in a meaningful way. And also how best to evolve what Grace has already done multiple times into these new contexts that we're moving into. And so we're going to be using the design session on Thursday to explore that. And then related to Paisano, you're right that it is Paisano, meaning that it is the surrounding area. And so it's like the countryside it's like the people of the land, which involves several of the poorest parts of Bogota. And I think it includes one of the richest parts of Bogota. So they have some extreme inequality, which is part of the dynamic of the complexities of what they work with. But what I can do is I can, if you give me your email, or if I find your email, maybe I already have it. Oh, Penny's got it. She'll give it to you. I can make an email introduction with you and Kelly Maija. She's one of the founders. That you could just meet her for a coffee and have a chat about it, because that would be the best way to get started. As one of the things that they've done is they've done almost all of their work with no money, because what they do is they create dynamic exchanges between people about the surplus of what exists in the community. And they're helping people see that they can just act in service of the community without needing money. And so one of the things is people offer things that they have, and then anyone who needs it gets it, and they just play this logistic coordination role. And they do time banking, where people offer services with time banking. And they have helped thousands of people to connect with each other through these alternative economic models. So and they're also super powerhouse social entrepreneurs. They're like amazing, amazing people. So yeah, I can introduce you directly to Kelly, and you can.
Thank you very much. It's great, amazing. Thank you. Good.
Yeah. Okay, Claire, over to you. Hi, Claire.
First of all, I meant to say it's so amazing to hear all of these stories woven together. It's mind-blowing, actually, and it really reflects what we're feeling in the work we're doing with Regenerate Cascadia in a microcosm, in a sense. I just wanted to pick up on what you were talking about with the community foundations and the funding piece, and just to really sort of say that without a really coherent vision, that's the thing that just is so powerful. So the storytelling, I mean, we're talking about a paradigm shift. And so that's one of the things I'm noticing in the community. So in Victoria, so as part of that Cascadia, Regenerate Cascadia, Victoria has been doing this work for quite a long time. So we've been able to mobilize across different scales. And we've been talking to people for quite some time, for years, actually. And so when we talked about the activation tour, people were really excited. And we noticed that the groups that were really incapable of coming together to sort of really take advantage of the tour were the people, the higher level of complexity organizations, government, all of the institutions, even the larger NGOs are just really struggling with, they've got year-long planning. Everyone's maxed out. And so trying to fit in something brand new, whereas the watershed organizing groups, the faith communities have been amazing. And some of the youth-oriented groups, they're the ones that have been able to kind of really see the opportunity and come together. And I'm feeling like that actually is a powerful story in and of itself, because they can respond in a nimble way to what's coming, just the story, see how important it is. The higher levels up, they know it's important, but they've got so many other priorities that they're paying attention to that it gets lost. And so I just wanted to say that when it comes to the funding and the community foundations, everyone kind of knows there needs to be this new story that they can orient around. But I just can't wait to be able to sort of have these groups come together in a significant way so that there is a story there. And then to be able to invite those community foundations in to say, you're not paying attention to what you need to, but they don't even, wouldn't even need to say that if the story's clear and compelling enough. So anyway, I just wanted to bring that forward, that I think there's been an absence of good storytelling, and I'm so grateful to the people who can tell the stories well and coherently, because, you know, that's what we've needed. So, yeah.
Yeah, and Claire, am I correct that all of the work you've done for years in Victoria, the Victoria Community Foundation never offered you funding, but when they heard about what you're doing with Regenerate Cascadia, they're like, would you like some money? Isn't that basically what happened?
Yeah, no, they got excited. They knew that bioregionalism, I think they were finding that wherever they turned, bioregionalism was coming up. And so we were kind of like we need to, so to me, it's like they're jumping on the next train. I don't know that they don't fully understand, I don't believe, but they have invited us. There are openings there. So yeah, we will see. But I just in the community, so I'm working as a community artist, I would try and find funding in any of the sources that that were supposed to be aimed at the community. It was so difficult to get funding for collaborative work. Like you had to be one organization or another, or if you're trying to get arts funding, it had to be an arts organization. There were just so many things that were restrictive that eventually meant that you were working way too hard to get the funding. It wasn't worth even trying to do it. So yeah.
Thank you for that, Claire. I think that's a really helpful insight. And an indication of where the systems are breaking down because they cannot adapt to the changes, which is also a much deeper and troubling or liberating, depending on which emotion you're feeling at the moment, observation. So yeah, thank you for that. Brian, over to you.
Claire, thank you for all of your comments, and really looking forward to hearing all about the Cascadia tour, and hats off to you and Brandon for all the organizing, because that's a huge amount of work. And I know that what it takes to pull something like that together. So congratulations and best of luck with as we're getting closer and closer. And Joe, your presentation today was great, how you weaved everything together, and your efforts at doing the planetary weaving of the funders, the bioregional work on the ground, and all the organizations that are getting involved. It's just so important. It's critical to everything that we're doing at the local level in our bioregions. And I wanted to thank you and Penny for all your efforts, because without that, this wouldn't be coming together. I think the time is right for this work, and I think we can keep the momentum going and really build this planetary network in a huge way over time. Just to give a bit of a teaser for the summit in the Toronto area at the end of January, we're looking at, it'll be cold here, but we're looking to heat things up. We're thinking of a week-long summit. So we want to build those fractal scale links through the week. So looking at the GTB, the Greater Toronto Bioregion, and the work going on here, and building that and building momentum. And then bringing together the Great Lakes landscape leaders, the work that Jonathan and Victoria are doing in the Genesee Finger Lakes area, the work in Cleveland, the work that Anna is starting in Buffalo, Niagara, and Chad's work that he's starting in Michigan, and all around the Great Lakes. So we want to bring that together as well, bring those voices together, and scale link to the Great Lakes Basin, and then scale link to the Colorado River Basin, Cascadia, other areas around the world that are part of the emerging planetary network. And then crescendo to the launch of Bioregional Earth that that Joe and Penny are birthing, and we're all a part of. So I think it's going to be and set along the way centering the voice of youth and elders. So that just gives you a bit of a teaser for it, and stay tuned.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. And I want to stress one of the things that's a big priority for me is I've learned really deeply, as I think many of you have as well, that if you don't have some sustained long-term funding for the people who hold the processes within your community, that everything just falls apart. And so the clear and strategic need for funding the landscape, what's called in Common Land Foundation's model, the core team of the landscape partnership. But we would just call those the landscape leaders here in the design school, but it's the people who are mapping the projects, convening the people, making sure that things keep moving forward. And this needs to happen on like 20-year or larger timeframes. It needs to happen on large timeframes. And so the need for funding for these process holders is like essential. It's like you've got nothing without it, because everything falls apart at the next moment. As soon as there's no one holding it, it falls apart. So we have to have the ability to hold it. But from there, it very immediately reveals itself that there's this like, portfolio of fundable projects within the landscape that are highly strategic and highly important and well enough organized that they're ready. And the landscape leaders are actually revealing those opportunities. Like I remember when we were with Brian and Susan in Toronto the last time, most recently about a month ago, that Brian was identifying fundable projects and naming them to potential funders as we're meeting with them. Like, for example, did you know that there was this huge 100-farm grant applied to the provincial government of Ontario that was going to help 100 farms convert from industrial to regenerative? But then they decided to defund it. Thank you, corrupt politicians. And now they're only going to do like 3 pilot projects, but there are 97 other farms that are ready, and it's all organized and they know what they need to do. All they need is the funding. And so as a landscape leader, to be able to identify those immediately fundable opportunities and connect them to funders who can bring the resources just changes everything. But here we're talking about large pools of funding. Converting 100 farms is something like maybe we need 10 million Canadian dollars, or it's like it's not getting $10,000. It's big. But when we get into collaborative funding partnerships, this isn't big at all. This is normal. These are typical sizes of funding for the scale of work that it is. And so this matchmaking through organizing and trust, held by the processes of weaving the territories, is why we have to fund the landscape leaders and bring funding to the landscape processes, which are normally called projects. Like you might say that's a project of converting farms, but it's actually a process of connecting people, a process of identifying opportunity, a process of mapping landscape, a process of zoning landscape function, and on there are many landscape processes. And that's what needs to be funded, are the landscape processes. And so this change in thinking is really big. And this is why we need collaborative funding, because you're not going to find the scales of funding that are needed from any one source ever, not for this kind of work. And so I just wanted to elaborate on that a little bit more, that a major focus in the design school is to help the landscape leaders to learn together and then help find that together with them, find the funding to support them and to fund the landscape processes that they help to steward or that they help to convene. And that this is the way of building the planetary network. And this is much more than the bioregional activation process, which is what we're going to be in Eugene for 2 days in Oregon, right? Like, what are we going to do in 2 days? We're going to get people really excited and get them talking to each other, and that's it. That's what happens in 2 days. But then we have to sustain the process for the long term, because we need Claire and Brandon funded to hold the process for the long term. So you see how we're just teasing people with the bioregional activation tour if we don't do this other part. And actually we're crushing people's dreams if we don't do this other part. So I wanted to just elaborate on that a little bit to just help us see the sort of the method and the madness of why the bioregional activation process is so important, why the weaving among funding networks is so important, why the creating of replicable models, like how do you map the ecosystem of learning to create a bioregional learning center? How do you convert a piece of land to a community land trust? How do you, et cetera, et cetera. There are lots of things to learn. And we need to be sure the landscapes are learning from each other to just make it happen faster. And so, so I want to share a bit more of that, as that's why the design school has such a strong focus on landscape leaders, is because it's an anchor of the strategy of enabling us to increasingly mobilize resources into landscapes. So we're not talking about this, we're doing it. That's what this is our moonshot, if you want to think of it that way. So Claire, what would you like to add to that?
Yeah. Yeah, I did want to bring something in, just that the people who are in positions for funding, so whether they're community foundations or putting large funds together, are often part of boards or groups of people who are really well connected into the system. And when they hear a coherent story, I would imagine the inspiration and the potential of being able to do a lot of what they know they're trying to do. Those options haven't been there. I think the coherence of the story you were just painting, Joe, and you're so good at telling that story, is a really and it needs to be compelling to them, because they weave those stories themselves in their they are often movers and shakers in their own communities, but whether it's government or whether it's it's like really infiltrating the whole system through those systems. I just wanted to bring that to light because I'm really struck by that.
Yeah,
That it's not just funding.
no, I have a personal goal for Regenerate Cascadia. I have no idea if I'm going to achieve it, but I'm going to have fun trying, which is I'd like there to be $1 million in the Regenerate Cascadia Fund by the end of the Cascadia Summit on November 12th. Now, is that going to happen? I don't know, but actually they need a lot more money than that. And so $1 million could allow them to fund core teams for like 2 years, which is basically like Claire and Brandon and a couple other people, and then give money to watershed councils across Cascadia. Like $1 million would go pretty quick, actually, because they actually need $1 trillion. I mean, they need, you know, if for those of you who don't know how big the Salish Sea is, it's huge. And so like 430 rivers in Cascadia, or something like that. It's a huge, huge meshwork of landscapes. And so the scale of money that's needed is monumental. So $1 million is actually not hard to imagine. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to make it my goal. If I can just, you know, talk to people who might be able to fund it, let's cobble together the first $1 million for Regenerate Cascadia. And I'll say that when people ask me, like, so what are you trying to achieve? Well, I'd love to have $1 million in their bank account come November 12th. Do you guys want to make that happen? I live in Columbia. I'm not going to do it. Do you guys want to make that happen? And we're going to see, because we're going to meet a lot of people on this tour. And then as Brian and Susan can attest, bringing us back to Cascadia afterwards, like the way they've been bringing us back to continue telling the story of the GTB, we just keep getting invited to more and more, like, you know, more and more doors are opening. And that's going to really help the GTB. It's going to help the Great Lakes. You know, it's like that. So so I just wanted to name that there is a really beautiful way of holding the coherence. Like, people are organizing and shit's getting done. So this is fundable. This is very fundable. So yeah. Are there any other questions or comments before we bring this update session to a close? We can just bask in it. It's pretty cool. I just want to really stress this one thing, which is I'm today's storyteller, but this story only exists because of what everyone else is doing. Just want to really stress that. Like telling the story of meeting with Paisano and Barichara was like, should I tell you guys about Camila and Vicky? Should I tell you about Emilce? Should I tell you about Tanya and Sassy? Just on and on and on. Like, how many people made that happen? Hundreds. Just for that 3-day meeting. And so, so that's the same in every one of these landscapes. And so what I see is beginning to happen is our landscape leaders sort of like Neo in the Matrix movies. For those of you who know the Matrix movies, like Neo had to be told he wasn't the one, and then he had to believe it all completely for himself, and then he became the one. Our landscape leaders are starting to believe. And so like when Roberta said, I've got a 5-year budget for you, you might be talking to funders. I'm like, hell yeah, Roberta, bring it. Let's get that thing funded. And so it's not because I've got money sitting in my pockets. It's because we're building these relationships to play matchmaker. And so, so this is for real. We're like, we're gonna do this. And I think I say that every time we do one of these updates, but that's because I mean it. Like, we're really doing this. And for any of you who can join us for the Cascadia tour, or just tag along online, it's gonna be pretty cool. You're gonna see a lot of weirdos and misfits because it's Cascadia, which is fun in its own right. There's some really interesting people here. And I just can't wait. I can't wait. We're gonna like, come next Thursday, we're gonna be crashing at Brandon's house. And from then on, it's real. And I managed to get the arrangements made that Jessica's gonna come for a part of it. So I'm gonna have Elise with us for little bits of it. So some of you may get, at least for those you don't know, at least saw this. Maybe you guys have seen this. I don't know if you guys know what this is, because it's not Joe's book. It's Claire's textile art. And so Elise has been sending little love messages to Claire saying she wants to draw with her. So Claire, we got to make time somehow for Elise to draw with you, just so you know.
Yeah, that would be wonderful.
So daddy check mark, met having my daughter meet awesome artists and get to draw with them.
And actually, Joe, Brian and Susan have done the most beautiful poster with the artwork. Regenerate Earth. I think, is it Regenerate Earth or yeah. And we're going to try and get that, make that available in, yeah.
Yeah, so
We're
imagine a
looking at-
poster that looks basically like this, but says Regenerate Earth on it. And then imagine that going viral. Because yeah, I want one. Yeah, Brian and Susan are rolling out the swag. Between them and Eduardo and Sandra, who have been already making swag like the Regeneración de Rio Colorado hats. Stuff's about to get cool.
No, the ultimate swag person is Brandon Letzinger. I haven't seen his basement, but apparently it is full of maps and everything.
He's trying to find a shirt.
Yeah, the poster Regenerate Earth is on our intergenerational zone page. If you click on the link and scroll down, you'll see it in small anyway.
You'll see me wearing the Cascadia flag when I come back to Cascadia. Brandon and his culture hacking friends created the Cascadia flag. They did a design competition because they're not dumb. And they brought all the Cascadia weirdos. Most of them are artists, as it turns out. So yeah, thank you everyone for being here today. I will be sure this recording is uploaded so that you can watch it again and everyone else in the school can see it. And we will see you all soon from the road because we're about to, get some moss in our ears or something going out in Cascadia. So thank you, everyone. We'll talk to y'all soon. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everyone.